So yesterday, Sergei Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, said that Russia wants to increase its military size to 1.5 million people. This is an increase from the originally announced increase of 1.15 million in December. So further increases. The Russian military has about 900,000 personnel at this moment, if you somewhat account for the deaths in Ukraine. So, interestingly, I'm not sure what they're attempting to do here because, frankly, his claims of what the Russian military can achieve in such growth are out of touch with reality. In most cases, I see the posture of the Russian military going backwards rather than moving forward, growing, modernizing, etc. I see it becoming more internalized, infighting, causing problems with building the equipment necessary and fielding the personnel necessary. So, as I said, they want to increase their personnel to 1.5 million by 2026 from about 900,000. This despite the fact that Russia is actually undergoing a massive reorganization as we speak because they can't fully man the units they have right now. When they entered the war in Ukraine, only 20% of the Russian military was considered to be in a high state of readiness. This is because Russian leaders assumed they would not have to fight a large land war anytime soon. And it's kind of interesting because now they're in a land war. And how did they not know they were going to fight it? Well, it's because the Kremlin kept many military leaders in the dark for fear of espionage activity. It's a major problem when you're trying to build your military up for specific purposes, but you're not telling them telling their leaders what the purposes are. I mean, corruption aside, and it is rampant in the Russian military, just keeping people in the dark is going to lead to failure, as we've seen. Not only do they have to backfill the equipment they've lost in this new plan towards 2026, but they have to expand on top of that by multiple divisions worth of personnel, equipment, and the logistics support that comes with that. And this is in a sanction-heavy environment where we are seeing Russia's GDP being reduced, limited access to Western tech that would be needed to field a modern army. And as I've said, the logistics issues they have already with the military they have, and they're going to pile another 500,000 plus folks on top of that. They want to increase their military by 600,000. I'm not sure that their economy can support a military that big at this point in time. I mean, on the personnel side, it would mean that they would have to probably change their conscription rules where they would require more conscripts every 12 months or potentially extending or elongating the service term that conscripts would have to serve in the Russian military. They potentially could use some of the manpower they've absorbed from Ukraine, assuming they hold on to that territory. But that's not a given, as I see the Ukrainians conducting a lot of pushes back into the territory that Russia has taken and recapturing it for the Ukrainians. So, and then frankly, I just don't see how they would get 600,000 willing Russians to volunteer after what has happened in this Ukraine debacle. They struggled to find the people that they ordered into service in their last round of conscriptions. How are they going to get any volunteers, let alone 600,000? The reality is these aren't serious reforms. At best, they're a modification of current postures with saber rattling. Frankly, this is Russia saying, we're going to get all big and bad, and the Western world going, okay, do it. You will focus on your military so heavily that it'll drive your economy further into the ground. And if you want to deploy these troops, you'll lose so many that it'll compound with your demographic problems, and your country is going to have a serious problem with no young people supporting all of the old people that made all these stupid fucking decisions for your country. As we've seen time and time again, Russian pride won't allow them to admit that they were wrong on the state of their military, wrong on the outcomes they had thought about in Ukraine, and wrong on their global influence. But rather than fix those, rather than go, okay, we screwed this whole thing up, let's conduct some reforms, let's fix everything. The U.S. had a similar scenario coming out of Vietnam, We had serious issues with how our military was being structured, built up, trained, etc. And we made major reforms over the next few decades to lead us up until 91, where we saw the full might of the U.S. military fully reformed and fully ready to dominate on the global stage, where we've been since then. Russia hasn't been able to look internally at themselves and admit that they have these problems. Instead, they're doubling down on the Russia circa the 1960s. And we'll see them fail yet again.